Hey, we're on. Welcome back to Grit Gym. We've got the door open today, so I grabbed the fly swatter. I don't know if we're all the way in here, so you guys just got a close up. But welcome back to Grit Gym. You got the Eric and Adam show today. Ooh, I'm hooked up. All right. Anyway, today we're going over residual training effect. We cannot see your comments. I forgot to set up the phones so that we could actually see what was going on. My bad, guys. But I'll peek back there periodically if you guys have any questions. But today we're going over residual training effect and how you can use that to improve your training so that you can live your experience the way that you want to in this life. And Eric's got a bunch of different stuff that he's going to teach you on as we go through this. But the main thing that residual training effect is trying to show is how long do you keep the effect of what you train for. So if you're training for strength, how long do you keep that strength? If you're training for speed, how long do you keep that? If we were to just, if you were to just crawl in bed and come home from work and not work out for a month and then go back to the gym, how much strength would you keep? How much aerobic capacity would you keep? How good a shape would you still be in after that month? So that's what we're going to kind of go over here in a little bit and why that would be important to you. You'll see as we go along. But anything on a residual training effect before we jump into it?
No, that was about along with he gave the example of laying in bed, but also say you can also apply this if you're going on a 2-week vacation and there's only so much training you can do, or if you got injured and it's limiting some factor of your training,
or if you're scared to death to go on a 1-week vacation because you won't have a gym and you're like, right. Oh my God, what am I going to do if I can't work out? Well, you're not going to lose all your gains from 1 week of vacation. You actually might come back stronger, and some of this is why.
Yeah. So here we got 4 main factors that determine how the time course of your detraining. So from the point where you stop training to how fast these factors are lost. There's four factors that go into that. So the first one being the duration of training preceding cessation, or the accumulation period. So how long?
Yeah, you're gonna have to tell that. Not very many people are gonna.
So during the time you stop training. So for example, we'll get down here, but we have 5 different factors that we're going to be addressing, and they're all lost at kind of different intervals, but. What they all have in common is the longer that you have practiced those up to that point, the slower you will lose them. You'll start to lose them at about the same time, but it won't be at the same magnitude or the same rate of loss. And a lot of that depends on the duration of training, and that's just the experience that you have doing it, right? So of course, if you do something longer, if I've practiced heavy lifting for 5 years. I'm not going to lose it as fast as someone who has only been doing it for 4 months.
Yeah, consistent lifting. Yeah,
right.
It's just like any skill that you have. The longer you've been doing it, the more likely you are to keep that for a long period of time. Right. So someone who just started this thing and they get really strong and then they stop doing this thing, well, they're going to drop out. Whereas somebody that's been doing this thing for a really long period of time and they've gotten to this point, and then they're going to stop completely. They're going to lose it slower and slower and slower like that.
And then
that's a pretty mountain.
There's number 1. Number 2, so the athlete's training experience in general. So their training age, how long they have been doing it.
Which is way different than your chronological age. Like I'm 33 years old, but I have been training. I've been doing strength training since real strength training with the barbell since 1997.
Yep.
So I've been training for a very long period of time. My chronological age is not 33 years old. Or my chronological age is 33, but my training age is probably somewhere, what is that? This 22? 22 years?
Yeah. I'm at about 10 years,
21,
maybe.
21 years.
So, and so this is a little different than the first. The first is mainly the accumulation period before that period of detraining, but this is kind of your experience over your whole lifetime of training. So how long you've been
that's a good point.
Kind of athletic in general, or just
if you took 5 years off movement in general, add to your
right. But both of these are kind of like experience, or how long you've been practicing something. Has a really big effect, and that takes us to number 3, which is kind of the most in depth. Now we break down these actual different qualities that we've trained for, and we see that they're not all lost at the same rate. And so this is important to understand for athletes who have different types of competition periods. And so it's kind of used as like a map for us coaches is what to prioritize during specific periods of their training.
Yeah, or to like people's needs. Like somebody comes in and they've been practicing strength training for years and years and years, but they've not done any aerobic work whatsoever, or any kind of glycolytic or alactic work, in the anaerobic. They haven't done any of that stuff. They've just been practicing maximal strength. Well, we could pretty much know that we can get them a result by adding in 1 day a week of aerobic work and 1 day a week of anaerobics training, so that like just immediate effect, their heart's going to be pumping harder.
Yep. And so if we dive into this and take a look, we notice right away that the aerobic system and maximal strength, which we talked about in one of our other videos, but maximal strength, the two biggest factors are the neural system and then the muscle hypertrophy, or the size of your muscles, are going to be the two biggest factors.
And the nerves are going to have a way bigger play in that than your muscle. You're going to get a lot stronger before your muscle starts to grow.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, so both of these are the detraining time period for this is 30, give or take 5 days. And so what that's saying, so if say you have a 1 rep squat max or a certain distance you can run in a certain amount of time, that's going to stay relatively stable for almost a month.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons for this, kind of the way I think about it, is the more biological infrastructure that you have to lay down inside your body to produce this adaptation, the longer you'll keep it, because the longer that takes to break down. So, for instance, maximal strength, like it takes your body a lot of resource to build up that muscle size, and although the nervous system's super important in that, that size of your muscle will actually stay probably longer than that. Right. Neural. It's that the size of your muscle is going to be more important and plays a bigger role in why you keep your maximal strength for that long. And then with the aerobic system, you're doing like your cells have to change. They're going to add more mitochondria, which are kind of like the power generators of your cell. You're going to lay down more capillaries, so you get better blood circulation. You can faster deliver nutrients and stuff like that. So that takes a lot of resource for your body to build those things up. So it also takes a long time to break them down. And then kind of this mid-range is anaerobic system and our strength endurance, which are somewhat similar, but you want to talk about?
Yeah, we can go. So the reason, like what he just went through right here and here, that we keep these for 30 to this is another reason for what I said the other day with the with why you wouldn't max out every single day. So you can do about 92% of your 1 rep max for 4 reps. But you wouldn't want to do that on week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, because you'd lose out on week 4. We're still going to keep this, and so 4 weeks later, we're still going to have that, and so we can go, so we can do a 3+1, and we can try to do a 4 rep max down here. So we can go 92%, and then we can go, what would that be, like 87%, and we can go 81%, and we can go 76%, let's say, of your 1 rep max of that weight, so that you're building up too. There's another reason for why you go less up front, to let your body learn, to make sure that you get more out of this max out week here, because you're going to keep it throughout. It doesn't take much to maintain. It doesn't take much to maintain your strength. It takes something to bump it up a little bit though. So you got to be smart. It's another reason to be smart. Always good to be smart. Anyway.
And so, so we got our mid-range ones, anaerobic system, or which is basically our how well we can generate cellular energy in the absence of oxygen. Do you have an easier way to explain? Like,
you don't use oxygen.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so we have these. So. And then our strength endurance is generally like how long we can create or maintain a decently intense muscular contraction over time. So for most people, like somewhere, I don't know, strength like 15 plus reps, that's kind of a strength endurance.
I mean, you could make the case that anything over 7,
Sure.
like anything over, like maybe even anything over 3 is strength endurance, really. But yeah, you get up to 15, you're definitely in strength endurance.
So our ability to produce these high muscular contractions over time is lost almost twice as fast in some cases as our ability to move as much as we can one time.
Yeah.
And so that generally needs to be trained a little more regularly.
Yeah. So you lose this like 10 to 20 days and you've lost it. Whereas you keep this one for a while and you keep this one for 25 to 30 days. So you lose.
Well, you start losing it, right?
Yeah, you start losing it. My bad.
It'll be
yeah,
a long
it's not
time,
like
a long time before you lose it. But
at day 10, you just fall
you'll
down.
Start you'll start noticing losses. Like
Yeah.
you try to do the same thing you could that many days ago, and you start to feel like you can't.
Yeah.
And again, so the magnitude of that loss, how fast it's losing, comes back to these two predominantly.
Yeah. You have to, if you train for long periods of time consistently in strength, you will end up getting stronger, and then you will also lose it when you do stop training. For any reason, you will lose it much slower. So, like, let's say you had an injury that kept you from something, like an act of God happened. You crashed a motorcycle, like something really terrible happened, and you couldn't train for a while. Well, when you do come back to training, you're going to have more of that strength because you did train for such a long period of time. This is ridiculous. Like me. Electric fly swatters. I'm going to get one of these flies here in a second. The nice thing about having the door open is that it's like being outside, but the bad part is a couple flies get in every now and then. But where else? Where were we in this?
So we kind of covered these two. Do you have anything else to say
So
about
aerobic is like jogging for long periods of time. Anaerobic is where it burns, like your heart's beating out of your chest and you're ready to die. Maximal strength is what it sounds like. Strength endurance is like maximal strength for a lot more reps. And maximal speed is how fast can we go. Plyometrics, like jumping up onto a box or doing any kind of jumping activity, would be speed. Sprints would be speed for short periods. Throwing medicine balls would be basically somewhere around the maximal speed area. That's why we do so much of that stuff.
And that detrains the fastest. If you can't see this is 5, give or take 3 days. So within less than a week, you're going to lose those abilities. And part of it is because so much of it is depending on motor control. And so it's like it's more of a fine-tuned skill. And so you have to practice it more to retain that skill. So someone like a gymnast would have to practice those fine-tuned skills really often to maintain it. But again, going up here, you won't lose it nearly as fast if you've been doing that your whole life. So a 20-year-old gymnast, maybe they're doing the same thing as a 10-year-old gymnast, like some technique that takes the same type is the same form or whatever, and they can do it. And when they do it, they're scored the same on it. It looks just as good, the 5-year-old or the 10-year-old and the 20-year-old. But if they both stop detraining, that 20-year-old, if she's been doing it, say they've both been doing it since they're 5. Are you hanging with me on that? I hope I'm making sense. Let me reset this up. You have 2 gymnasts. They've both been training since they were 5. One is now 10 years old. The other is 20 years old. So one has had 5 years of training experience. One has had 15 years of training experience. And they do the same routine, and it looks the exact same. They're scored the same on it. So visually, it looks the same. But now both of them stop training. That 20-year-old, when they come back to that in a month, they won't have lost as much of that. They won't have lost as much technique as the 10-year-old. And once they start training again, they'll get it back faster.
Yeah. Might have been easier to pick the same 2 ages.
Well, that defeats the purpose because training age.
I know, yeah.
I guess they could have started at different periods, but so.
No, that was good. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk consistency versus intensity.
Okay.
Which one, like, is it better to get in and just go hard, or is it better to back off of the intensity and stay consistent for long periods of time?
Right. Consistency is always going to be the key. Now, when you can get a good intensity with consistency.
Yeah.
But, right, yeah, you can only go as...
I think you engineer your intensity. I think consistency is the thing that is like the non-negotiable.
Yeah.
You have to be consistent. Whereas intensity is one of those things where it's like we're going to plan for the day where we really go hard, or we really go heavy, or whatever it is, or we're going to be really smart about it in one day where we come in and I'm like, oh man, I feel fresh today. This is great. My grip was strong. Like everything, I feel like, 315 felt light. Well, I might max out that. I might just go ahead and use that day because something happened where everything was, the stars aligned, whatever it was. My body was in good shape that day, so I take advantage of it. So that's why I say like that's kind of how I think of it. Like intensity is by design, consistency is a non-negotiable. You just kind of do it forever.
For sure.
Yeah. And then, what'd you call it? Not the danger of the quick rise. What was it?
So I guess another way to say this is quick. Duration of training. That comes back to duration. So quick to rise, quick to fall.
Yeah.
Just like the graph he drew up here.
You're going down fast.
Right.
If we can keep this consistent for long periods of time, and then we're going to keep it.
And that's kind of the big takeaway of this is like, that's why like if you just looked at this chart, you'd be like, okay, why does it matter? If you just looked at number 3 here, it's like it's like, why would it matter if I got this strong if I'm gonna detrain in this many days? What is the point of me putting in 10 years of work when I could just put in 1 year and go really intensely and maybe get to around that same point? But the thing is, you'll lose it faster. So
for general population, for people that aren't competing in anything, this is the big takeaway from the residual training effect. For athletes that are competing in something like a powerlifting event, or like Ali, like with fighting, or triathlon, anything like that, 20 days out, you should stop all your aerobic activity. You should just be done with it. It's not going to change. You're not going to make it better. So just knock it off. Your maximal strength, like there is no reason to max out within 20 days of your event. Like just knock it off. Focus on your anaerobic systems until like 14 days out, and then stop that. And then about 3 days out, you should stop your speed work. The last 2 days, you should just be sitting around, just relaxing, go and get a float tank and go and get an ice bath, and then sleep for the majority of your time, so that you're so rested when you hit that event, and you're so hungry for boiling the steam off out of your bones that you just go hard. That's how this would be effective for an athlete.
Yep.
Kind of went long there. My bad.
No, that's good. Do you have anything else to add to 3? That was about
add to 3?
Everything that.
Which
the number 3, like this
targeted
chart. Do we cover this?
Lots of different rates. To be perfectly honest, I don't know. Honest, I don't like to say that, but I don't know a ton. This is about as much as I'm going to know about that.
Yeah,
that
really
subject.
As much as you need to know.
Yeah, I think that's a subject that.
Okay, so we covered that pretty well, and then so moving to 4. The last of the 4 big factors influencing this time period of detraining. So the amount of specific training loads during detraining. So
detraining, yeah.
This would be more of an example, for athletes who are who have an in-season and an out-of-season. So their training is going to look quite a bit different, and in season they have to save more of their recovery resources and training resources for more specific type of training, like their actual play, like what they're doing on the field.
Yeah.
And so, but we this point is just basically stating that if we at least put some of that in, it's just showing that if we put some of that training, that type of training in, like say maximal strength, if you sprinkle just a little in there, it won't keep decreasing at that same amount of speed. It's that simple. It's just, which is kind of obvious. The more of it you have,
we were talking about this earlier with basketball.
Okay.
Why would you basketball players are jumping down. This is just an easy example. Basketball players are jumping down in practice, up and down in practice and in games all season long, right? Mm-hmm. So why would we add in more plyometrics?
Right. So sometimes the person's sport is going to cover that. I mean, it's going to be the thing that is the most specific to their sport because it is their sport, and so it's going to cover
additional.
Right.
They need to focus more
if they're
on
practicing.
What you were saying.
Yep. And so what they're not getting in that is maximal strength. Now, they don't really, like, during the off season is when you're really building up maximal strength, but you want to do your best to retain it during season. So, 'cause, like, a football player, maybe they get up to a certain level of strength, they're not going to expect to add strength to that during the 4 months of competition, but they don't want to lose that either. They don't want to get to the last few months and then feel a lot weaker than they were. So that's another point with all these have in common is you don't need as much of the thing to improve. What am I trying to say? You don't need as much of the stimulus to maintain
right. Yes.
as you needed to improve.
Yeah, you need a ton. Like, it takes a lot of work to improve from where you are.
Like, in some cases, you can cut it in half, half and maintain. Especially for like aerobic and maximal strength, the amount of work you put in to build that, you can maintain that on about half.
Yeah. And
depending in the season, you might do half, you might even do less. And then you kind of just like looking at that on a spectrum. Like, the less you do, the faster you'll lose it, but if you still put a little in, you'll maintain it better than you would without it. So like that's where it comes up to the coach to decide like how much they want to do within that season to either maintain or maybe they're still detraining but keep it at a really slow rate where it won't really have an effect at the end, and then you can use more of that time and biological resources, recovery resources.
Right.
To
that's why we're not concerned about you going on a vacation, because we know you're not going to lose all that much. But we want to minimize days off. We still want to get something, like a day where you're coming off of. You went on a bender the night before, and you haven't slept in 2 days, and you have eaten like crap, and you come in, you're like, I'm basically still drunk. Well, we still want to go through a warm-up and maybe get just a couple of really light sets in and go home so that we can still get something. So we're not concerned about the vacation of you not working out for a week, but we're also, we don't want to take days off on a regular basis. Yeah.
Yep.
Is that all of it?
So that's about all there is to it, really. Like, I mean, that's the takeaway, right? Just recapping real quick. These different abilities are lost at different rates. So if you have an ability that you're really focused on, be aware of its time frame of detraining. Realize that the more training experience you have and the longer you've been working on that specific skill, the slower it'll detrain. It'll detrain to less of a magnitude. And then the amount of, basically, the more you do it in a period where you're doing it less in general, the slower you'll lose it. So that last one's just kind of common sense.
But if you don't use it, you do lose it.
You do lose it, but to what degree?
It's true.
Right.
To what degree? Yeah.
So.
All right. What else we got to cover? What is it? Is it July 1st? Next month, a month from now, Friday and Saturday, we're going to be closed. Not this month, but next month, July 27th, 28th, I think it is. We're going to be at Perform Better. It's a continuing education event in Chicago, so we're all going to go and become better coaches so that we can come back with better skills for all of you guys. And then we're also going to do a sponsored, all the sponsored athletes are going to be there, and we're going to do a float next month. And then 2 months from now, we're going to have the Move Strong Games. Really excited about that. So definitely ask us questions about that out here at Grit. We'll give you more information, and there will be more in the newsletter. If you haven't signed up for the newsletter, go to gritgym.com. It's up in the top right-hand corner. Wait, no, it'll pop up, and it'll have like a thing that you can actually enter. But other than that, that's Residual Training Effect. Hope you guys got something out of it. It's not a big deal if you miss a week. If you miss a week, you're still going to maintain most of what you had. It doesn't take a lot to maintain what you already have. It takes quite a bit of effort to up your game. You should always be up in your game. But we want to go about this smart, and this is one of the ways that we go about it smart. Anything you want to end with?
That covers it for my end.
Good sweaty day, isn't it? All right. I'm going to shut the video off. Thanks for being here, guys. And we'll see you soon.